In case you've seen a Mass scheduled for Wednesday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. here at St. Charles, it is not an error. I'm not? Go to main camera. Okay. Take two. In case you've seen a Mass scheduled for Wednesday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. here at St. Charles, it is not an error. Our two girls coming into the church, Samira and Suzanne, now known as the elect since the rite of election with Bishop Deely, will be presented with the creed at this Mass. It will not make the Mass any longer, and we wish to have as many parishioners as possible at the Mass to give them a warm welcome and share our total Catholic belief with them. Spread the word, come spread the love for these two young girls from the Congo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You'll see. Right now would be one. Go ahead. Yep. Welcome. We're going to begin with a song. Gracious God, thank you for being the magnet that draws us together all the time, but especially this morning as we heard your call to tune into this retreat to hear what you have to say to us. Open our hearts that we can listen to whatever that message is for us. Open our bravery to trust that you do want to involve us in bringing your reign into being. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Welcome to Gritty Prayer. This is our third and final session. And if you've missed either of the other two sessions, they'll be online and available through Lent. So you can backtrack and pick those up if you'd like to. They're on the main website of the parish at the bottom. It's a Gritty Prayer link, and it's all under that. I just want to say a note about this song. So we've been kind of exploring the song as we've been traveling, and the first week we were thinking about our own personal grit, and we thought about what if the words of this song are about me saying to my own gritty past, or episodes from my gritty past, you know what? It's okay, you're welcome. You can show up here. Like welcoming parts of ourselves that are kind of, broken. That was the first week. The second week was really about leaning into the song as maybe it's God who's singing this to us, and it's about God knowing our complicated worldly present, like all of the stuff that is going on in our collective world. And God is saying, you're welcome. Come here, bring it all to me, and let's see what I can do through you. And then today, it's really about what if God is inviting us to be that welcome. So either in the church when someone walks in the door, whether or not you're in charge of welcoming, are you invited to be part of God's welcome? But besides that 1 hour in your week, what would it be like if you were in charge of bringing God's welcome to whoever you meet the rest of the hours of your week? So that's what I feel like this is an invitation to become part of God's hospitality in the world. So I love this song because there's just a lot of levels to it. I'm going to take that little clicker back. Thank you. There we go. And I also want to say a little bit about this icon. The idea was that maybe we're encouraged often to bring prayers to God that are really ready for God, prepared, well put together, shined up a bit, cleaned up a bit, and not so encouraged to bring the stuff that is kind of a mess. And so the idea of gritty prayer was really just saying, okay, this is how it is, God, bringing the mess. But we've explored a couple different ways of understanding grit, like how about the grit you put on your forehead on Ash Wednesday, right? The grit that says, this is temporary, what we're in right now. That's a little bit of that. But today we're going to look at grit in its other wonderful way. Why do I keep doing that? Is it turning on its own? I don't like that. Grit is also fertilizer, all right? So the big challenge of today is to ask ourselves, what in our story, in our grit, is God maybe calling us to use for building God's reign? So that's where we're going today. So you're here this morning, live at St. Charles if you're here, or some people are at St. Mary's, some people are at St. Pat's, some people are at home. You're here paying attention right now because God called you. I mean, I did a lot of PR for this retreat, but you would not have shown up if it was me calling you, because I don't have that much gravitas, right? So God is doing something in you that made you think, I think I'll go to that. So the cool thing is God is always doing something in you that says, come this way toward God, right? And often we're like, busy, 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 or God doesn't use our bulletin, I don't know. God doesn't use Facebook as much as we want God to, I don't know, but we heard it today, and because God invited us and we said, okay, I'll take the invitation, I want you to try to jack up your expectations for today. Expect to experience the presence of God today because God's always here, and today we've completed the equation by us showing up too. Okay, so raise your expectations for today. Something great could happen. All right. So we went from gritty past, personal, gritty present, communal, and today it's about serving in a gritty world. Okay? It's not only gritty, but there's a lot of grit that needs to be served today. So, with all that in mind, and with God's invitation, if you need pen or paper, raise your hand. Did everyone get something? Lovely. We're going to take our first minute of time with God, just you and God. If you need space, which I encourage you to, because you're just really working with your own heart and your own mind, give yourself a little more space if you feel a little bit crowded with someone. And don't take that personally. It's just because Sheila said, okay? So it's her fault. But I'm just going to ask you one question about today. What is your desire for this hour? Just take a moment to ask, what is it you desire? Maybe for God to do with you this hour? Maybe for something to happen in you? What's your desire for this hour? I'll give you another 30 seconds to finish that up. All right. I remember I was at some workshop years ago, and it was for people that work in the church, and someone was talking about cool bulletins. You know, bulletins are they seem to be all the same, right? You know, there's a bulletin company, a couple bulletin companies, and they actually make them a lot the same. There's a cover page and there's columns, but they were sort of highlighting great bulletins. And one bulletin that was highlighted, I absolutely love this idea, and I think it was just for a season, maybe the season of Lent, that they had this on their front page. For those experiencing the death of a child, call Bob, 742-6901. For those who are undergoing a divorce, call Miranda Jones, 784-6731. There were phone numbers and names after all these, but I'll try to remember some of the things on here. For those with chronic illness, for those experiencing joblessness, for parents of a child who identifies as gay, lesbian, or otherwise part of the LGBTQ plus community, for those struggling with addiction, for those who need a small faith-sharing community, for those who struggle with church teaching, for those discerning a vocational call, for those engaged in serious personal decision-making, for those who want to serve the poor. So the whole page, front page, was needs and people who, let's assume, went through that, who had that need and are now able to serve that need. In a way, it was sort of like AA mode, right? Once you've gone through the 12 steps, you're now officially able to be a sponsor. It was a little bit of that sponsor kind of thing. I was really impressed with it, and I really wish I could remember what parish it was, because I would love to see how they're doing now. What do they have on the front page now? But in a way, by exploring our grit on this retreat, we've been asking this question: where do I need grace? We've been leaning into the places of our personal and communal suffering, and we brought these things to God. So I hope in this retreat that you actually experienced God's concern for you individually and for us in our problems in relationships, church, town, country, the world. I think this is how God wants us to respond to our gritty prayer. In sharing our grit, I hope we've met God more personally. God desires to give us something beyond our greatest expectations. If you've brought these concerns to God, the grit to God, do you have a sense of God's response? Have you had a sense of that happening? So we see two possibilities for responding to God healing the grit that we've shared. One, like the parish I mentioned, we might serve in a way that directly comes from our grit. Like the thing that we've been wrestling with now has been transformed enough that we can help others who wrestle with that same grit. Or maybe to go beyond our habitual work or that work and take up something very new in God's reign. So today we're going to ask God about where we might be called to work in his reign, and we'll explore the possibilities in two areas, in our parish and in the world beyond the parish. I want to just give you one example of someone who felt called to serve in their immediate local church community. When I was a young adult, I served for 3 summers in Appalachian, Kentucky, and really tremendously poor children. I worked at a summer camp. Really poor. And it was disturbing how poor they were. And so then after coming home each time, I felt like I have seen something horrendous, the poverty, and something amazing. It was a Catholic camp, and we prayed with these kids. These kids have faith that did inspire me. So it was the whole, right next to each other, poverty and grace. But I came back to Boston, I'm like, no one gets this, okay? Like, I've seen something amazing and I have no community. Well, a guy named Joe Orlando was having the same thing because he had just come back from working with the Jesuit International Volunteers, and he wound up putting together a community for returned lay volunteers, for all the people that were sort of spiritually homeless after mission. Because actually the Jesuit Volunteer Corps has this phrase that relates to that. They say, once you've come back from the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, so that's the year, 1 year after college, you go serve somewhere where there's a lot of poverty in the United States. And they say, wrecked for life is the unofficial slogan because it changes how you see the world. And imagine if you are wrecked for life and you have nowhere to go with that. You have no community that experiences that. So he was gathering the Jesuit volunteer community, the international Jesuit volunteers, which are after that later, and then anyone else who had served in that capacity. So I found a home with them, but it was because here was a guy listening to his own pain in the church and saying, like, there's nothing for me. I might have to invent it, okay? So I give you our pastor now, who's going to talk a little bit about our particular situation. Father Phil Tracy, come on up.
Good morning. As a new pastor, you often see so many things that are different, are seen differently than others, and that is always the case. And part of that, I think, is we have many understandings of church. We get caught up in buildings, we get caught up in programs and mass times, and oftentimes we find ourselves struggling because we are trying to engage in those other levels. But when we listen to the gospel, Jesus makes it very clear that church is about relationship. It's about participating in the Trinity. That Father, Son, and Spirit coming together in love is expressed into our world. Jesus takes Peter and his apostles and says, bring this relationship that I have shared with you to the world, to the ends of the world. And so as I come to my new parish, your old parish, All Saints, you realize that you've also had so many transformations. You've gone from perhaps attending a particular church at a particular time to all of a sudden finding out you're part of a massive church that stretches from Newcastle to Brunswick, that worships at least 11 times in 6 places at this current time. And so to me, as I listen to the previous 2 weeks, the thought that comes to me is that part of our struggle comes down to engagement. That as a parish, we might have a personal engagement with Christ. We say our prayers, we come to Mass, we do our part. But do we connect with others? And do we allow, or do we sort of limit ourselves that connection has to be formal, that it has to be part of a ministry, it has to be part of a program? And programs are good, obviously. They are necessary, they're very visible. But oftentimes what I hear from many who are more your age and my age than some of the younger ones, are, I feel like I'm letting the God down. I can't do what I used to do. What a sad thing to dismiss a lifetime of stewardship because I cannot do it at the same level. Instead of seeing that maybe as an invitation, how do I help others to follow in my footsteps? How do I help others to see the beauty and the energy and the love that kind of engagement can bring? And so my challenge to the greater parish, and in your reflection on this retreat, is to understand how best to utilize our gifts and to recognize gifts in others. That instead of always trying to put a square peg in another square peg that someone says is square, to look at what is it that I have as a passion? What is it that I have as an interest? And how does that link in any way, shape, or form to God? And how can I share that with someone? How can I recognize it in someone else? That again, whether they're coming to church, to Mass, maybe they love doing something. And my taking the time to recognize that is God speaking to them. It's God inviting them to look beyond themselves and whatever sort of immediate reward there might be to say, here's a way of service. Here's a way of making my love more real to others. How do I engage with others? We all have our friends. We all sit in the same area of our churches. But there are some who are visiting for the first time. There are some who come week after week and no one ever asks, what's your name? Can we be that person that just reaches out and says, I'm so-and-so. I love seeing you here with your children. I love that you have come to worship with us. Doesn't have to be any more than that, but can we at least engage at that level that someone cares about me, that someone sees me struggling and takes the time to hold the door, to ask a question, to make a comment. These are wonderful ways of engagement. And some of you may have heard this story, but it's a very powerful one, that in one of my former parishes, we had a soup kitchen. We had a program. We were feeding people. We were coming together, and it was a wonderful organization, but we were lacking a senior cook. And we had advertised, and every week, Father Phil, have we found anyone? Have we found anyone? And all of a sudden, this beacon of light shows up, newly retired, had cooked for large organizations and large functions, was willing to do it. After his first day, he quits. And I said, what? I'm not going to be told how to chop carrots. Making a stew, he was cutting carrots horizontally. Someone there thought they should be cut more, vertically because they would cook better. And that was the fight. That was the face of God. How to cut carrots. And one pushed and one pulled, and chaos ensues. And I think that's what happens when we are not aware that we make a difference. And we can help by securing who comes after us. Do we hold on to our ministry and our self-identity so hard that no one else wants to come and do what we do? Or they fear being rejected because we don't do it in the same way. And so new ideas don't flow. New passion does not arise. and we just get tired and tired as a community. As we continue in our prayer, perhaps God is inviting us to look around and to not bemoan who isn't here, but to recognize who is here, who are asking questions, whether in this building or another place, and how can I invite them to see the light that God has gotten in me, to acknowledge we all have grit, so let's not pretend we don't, but how do we bring that to God so that that greater purpose, engagement with Christ, will lead to engagement with others, and we truly see the power of God and the mercy of God and the blessings of God in all places, all peoples, and all time. Was that long enough for you, Sheila? Okay. She put me on a time clock, but didn't really tell me how long I had. So
That was the perfect amount. I don't know how you knew that. All right, we're going to spend a few minutes, 10 minutes actually, reflecting a little bit on what Father Phil just shared with us. But I'm going to challenge you to, so you're going to be doing some writing. I'm going to challenge you to be having this reflection very much with God. So you know this, there's a way to do reflection that is like as if God doesn't exist, right? I'm writing in my journal. Who am I writing to? Me, I guess, right? And there's a way to write that it's definitely a conversation with God. I keep thinking of a Thanksgiving years ago. We had a guest, and she's like, can we please all say what we're thankful for before dinner? And she's not any kind of a religious person. She's the first one to say that. And she said, all you gotta do is say, I'm thankful for this. And everyone did. And I was like, who are you thankful to? Right? So there was no sense of God. So let's have a sense of God. I'm gonna just put some questions up here. I'm gonna give you 10 minutes. I assume it will be unfinished business. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. We don't have time for everything, and for some of you, you're like, I already know the answer. That's fine. You get 10 minutes of lovely silence free of charge. So anyway, we'll just work on, wow, I'm missing something here. Where are my questions? I'm missing my questions. Are you kidding me? Okay. I have so many versions of this. I'm actually going to give you these out loud. Sorry about that. I'm going to actually give not 4 questions. I'm going to summarize them very succinctly. What needs am I drawn to address? That's one question. Or what need am I drawn to address? You can write the question down. We'll do 3 questions. What about Father Phil's talk resonated with me? What in Father Phil's talk resonated? Third one, what gift do I have that might help build relationships? All right, I'll give you 10 minutes. Just about 20 seconds left. So I found myself in this topic thinking about one of my favorite stories, and it's a day when Simon Peter is in a really bad mood because he's been fishing all night. He has nothing to show for it. Jesus commandeers his boat, takes him out in the water, comes back and he says, "Oh wait, how about we go fishing now?" And Peter's like, this is a paraphrase, but I think Peter looked at Jesus and said, "Really? Really? Really?" Anyway, "Master, we've worked hard all night and we've caught nothing, but at your command, I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners on the other boat to come and help. They came and they filled both boats, so they were in danger of sinking. What strikes me here is when Simon says, "We've worked hard and caught all night and caught nothing," I feel like that's Simon sharing his grit. You want to know what's going on in me that's really gritty, that's really rough? That's it. He shares it with Jesus, and Jesus responds to this sharing with a huge catch, more fish than Simon has ever even imagined. And we want to notice in particular that once Simon has shared his grit with Jesus, he met Jesus more fully, experienced his power, and he was changed. Once Peter experiences Jesus, and Jesus exceeds his wildest hopes, he's suddenly ready, actually, to abandon his habitual work. You'd think he'd be like, "I'm fishing forever." Like, why doesn't that happen, right? It doesn't. Like, it's just really amazing. He's like, "Okay, I'm ready to do something new." And Jesus calls that fishing for men. So that's kind of what we're about. I'm going to just pause and do another song. To ask for God's help with the listening here. Let me give this back to my assistant. Thank you. I don't have it memorized. Open my eyes, Lord. Have me to see your face. Open my eyes, Lord. Have me to see. Open my ears, Lord. So we're moving on to the second way we're being invited to serve in God's reign, and that's in the greater world. And there's a lot going on in our world right now, and we spent a little time in the past session talking about that. But I'm going to kind of review some of those current communal states of grit to just kind of reawaken that in you. And maybe for some of you, the first time you see all these together, and it's fairly overwhelming. But we're going to have another conversation with God in a few minutes, and it's really about what on this screen is drawing my attention, and maybe there's something I can do about it. And I love how Father said it really doesn't come down to programs, it comes down to relationships. And it may be that you are personally involved with someone about one of these issues. So that's at least a place to start. So here's some of what we've been struggling with. COVID for 2 years plus. There's a lot to say about that, but I don't know anyone who said, you know, this has just been a real boon for me. Said no one ever, right? Everyone struggles with COVID. The political divide and everything that's been magnified because of that, hate speech on the internet, hate speech in the neighborhood. The attack on the nuclear family that's going on, that we're experiencing, is a challenge. A sense of who really needs democracy? It's kind of messed up. A little bit of critique on democracy, a little bit of a challenge, baby out with the bathwater thing there, like maybe our democracy is falling apart. So that's a question. The church, is it shrinking? Are we dying? Like, what do I feel about the church? Is it something that I need to be more engaged with? The ecology on our planet, the environment, how we're taking care of things, pollution, overdevelopment, all of the earth issues, gender and sexuality issues, really big in our culture right now. Racism, also huge. How are we doing on taking care of mothers and unborn children, or even fathers and unborn children? How are we doing with that? Is that something I'm drawn to work on? And of course, Ukraine. Just add a war to all that. It's just a lot. So as we're going to take some more time thinking about this stuff and praying about it, I want to just address a couple, what would I say they are? Objections. These problems are too big. Well, yes, if you're in charge of COVID for the world, that's too big. But if there's something you're challenged to do with COVID, you personally, somehow, maybe you know someone who lives in an intense state of COVID fear. Maybe you're called to do something with them, right? So there's no such thing as too big. It's just a question of what part of it, right? That's one objection. Another objection is, I'm too old. Come on. I mean, my big days of helping are over. I just want to say there's a lady in California who had just raised 6 or 7 kids, and God called her to be an active minister in the Tijuana jail. And she did it until she was like 85. It's a great book about it. I think it's called Prison Angel. But she started that when she was 55, I think. So crazy. No such thing as too old. I'm too young. You know, I don't even know what I'm doing with my life yet. Maybe this is what you're doing with your life. I'm too busy. If it's relationships, no one's too busy. And you know what? I'm just too shy. Go watch episode 1 of Gritty Prayer and hear about me when I was shy, okay? So you can get through that. All right. So we're going to have a little dialogue with God. So I'm encouraging you to do this one as a dialogue. So if your name is Sally, it'll say S ... It'll say, I'm kind of drawn to this issue. So, and then the next one will say J if you're talking to Jesus, or G if you're talking to God, Mary, whoever you're talking to. Write it as a dialogue and trust that the Holy Spirit will guide you in the dialogue. So just something about serving in our world. Also, it could very well be that the Spirit is challenging you to serve in our world in a way that's not listed in my 10 up there. There's lots of ways, okay? But it's about serving in a way that is not simply limited to what we're thinking about in terms of what our parish is doing inside here. So anyway, we're going to take a few minutes to do some dialogue prayer with that, and I have some questions right here. So, all right. Holy Spirit, guide us in our dialogue. I'm going to give you about 1 more minute. Before you get too detached from your paper, I want you to remember the very beginning of today when you wrote down a desire for this time. Did any part of your desire happen? Did you receive any part of your desire? A no is a fine answer, that's true, or yes, I received part of it, or totally that happened. What did you receive part of what you desired? I'm going to ask you 3 more rewind questions. Second one is, in our time today, when did you feel closest to God? You might remember we did some music, some writing, you had some silence, there's Father Phil's talk, there was praying about serving the parish, praying about serving the world. When did you feel closest to God? And when in this hour did you feel furthest from God? Maybe you were distracted, maybe something that came up for you is just like set you off. When did you feel furthest from God in this hour? Lastly, we've had some times of talking to God today, and my question is, what was God like today for you? What was God like in that encounter? All right. I hope each of you received a half sheet when you came in here. That's a quick evaluation of today's session. I hope you can fill that out before you leave. When you do leave, you'll be given a full-size sheet, which gives you things to look at going forward. As always, if you have questions, reflections, I would love to hear them. You can email me. You probably have my email address because I write to everyone every week. So I think you have a way to get in touch with me that way. Also, I just wanted to thank a few people for being part of things, both today, but to the whole series. Father Phil Tracy, everyone who's involved in technology, Martha Corkery, Charlene Foley, Ann Carlton, Dorothy Peters, Sheila Finnemore, all staff, Bill Curran, Jared Martin, and Peggy Mason for this lovely image that we've been using for the whole series and the posters. Peggy did a great job with that. Our hosts today, Debbie Carroll, Kim Tully, at other places too, Liz and Peter Lombardo, Carla and Charlie Burnham, Hetty Blove, Sean Fiddler, Lori Boulay, Diane Young, Marcy Brenner, Jeannie and Dennis Lever, Karen and Brian Congleton, Natalie Norris, Tom Glatz, and Kathleen Trapp. And especially all of you for attending. I'm going to send you one more email tomorrow to just wrap up the whole thing, but it's been my joy to share this with you, and enjoy the rest of your Lent. Thanks.